I don't think he can be convinced.
Why not?
Ask him. He's convinced he's the right guy.
The deadline has come and gone for Justin Trudeau to step down as leader of the Liberal Party. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we're talking about a secret ballot that they're now putting out to push Justin Trudeau out. That's what's happening here. Clown World and the Liberal Party of Canada. Many Liberal MPs are talking about this secret ballot. They want to do a secret ballot, everyone just vote. And then what? Is it a 50% vote? Is it less? Is it like, what's the number? Pierre Poilievre announced what he would do as Prime Minister to stimulate the housing economy with some tax cuts. You also got Jagmeet asked about his Confidence Day motion again.
Good evening, Matt. According to Liberal MP Wayne Long, the intent of the deadline was to give Trudeau the weekend to reflect on what was discussed in that closed-door meeting. Despite Trudeau's reluctance, disgruntled members of the Liberal caucus want to put his leadership to the test with a secret vote. As of right now, there's no process for the Liberals to remove their leader, and the MPs can't force an anonymous vote on Trudeau's leadership. No official word yet from the Prime Minister's office. Meanwhile, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre issued a campaign pledge today saying he will do away with the GST on new homes sold under $1 million if elected Prime Minister. The Tory blamed the Trudeau government over high home prices. The Conservatives also estimate the new measure will reduce the cost of an $800,000 home by $40,000 and stimulate construction of another 30,000 homes per year.
That's a great move. It just allows builders to build more homes and it doesn't cost them as much. $800,000 house, it's a $40,000 discount. $400,000 house, $20,000 discount. If you can find a $200,000 condo, $10,000 discount, it's a lot cheaper for builders. This is a great move. Once again, another great policy idea by Pierre Poilievre.
Then we expect that we will collect about $2 billion more as a result of the 30,000 additional homes that will be built year after year because of this highly stimulative tax cut. It's going to spark more home building, which means more workers and businesses will be making money building homes.
So basically you stimulate the housing economy, more workers paying more taxes, make more money for the government. Government can afford to cut that tax and spend that money on other things. It's a brilliant plan. Once again, one that Justin Trudeau would never do because that would actually benefit Canadians and not himself.
Also today, the federal New Democrats took aim at the Tories, calling for legislation to improve abortion access in Canada. The NDP claimed there have been legislation, petitions, and threats aimed at reducing access. The party cited examples of what it called anti-choice moves from the Tories, including a petition by a Conservative MP that claimed more than 98% of abortions are for reasons of social or personal convenience.
So what Jagmeet's doing here with this whole abortion thing, it's another thing to just deflect and guard himself and the NDP party. I don't know if he really cares. I mean, he is a guy who wants power. He yearns for power. He gets up and when I'm Prime Minister, everyone laughs him out of the room, but he really wants that power. I don't know if his desire for power and the pension are of equal weight or if one is higher than the other. The NDP's numbers are bad, so they don't want to go to the polls right now. They don't want an election. Not to mention Jagmeet's got that juicy $2.2 million pension coming soon. So he's just going to keep supporting Trudeau using Poilievre as the shield, saying, oh, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives evil. So now he's using this abortion thing. He's not using his Confidence Day motion on the government. He's using on abortion. You missed that video a couple days ago, but he's not going to try to oust Trudeau. In fact, he's going to support him. But he was asked about this again today in a press conference.
And you said earlier that this is an emergency now. Other parties like the Bloc have put forward their priorities and they're willing to take down the government based off of the government's inaction. Why is this motion not a no confidence motion? Why don't you force the government to do this because it's an emergency, as you say, or be forced to go to an election?
Well, if you look at the past couple of years, we've been able to force the government to do things they didn't want to do. And we've been successful in doing so. The dental care program is something the Liberals voted against. They were opposed to it. They never wanted to do it. Kids are able to go to the dentist and look after their teeth. So we've gotten things done this way. So what we're putting it on the table. We believe the Liberals have failed to address the question of access. And we know the Conservatives are threatening the access to this right and are threatening the fundamental right itself. We're going to put forward an Opposition Day motion and we'll see how the parties vote on it. And we're going to use the pressure that we have with our allies, with folks that are listening, then join us. If you're looking at the Liberal Party and you're seeing them focus on themselves and not on your issues, join us. We're here for you. We're ready to fight for you, and we care about what people are going through. That's why we're presenting real motions that respond to the needs of people.
Oh, come on, Jagmeet. Just say you're supporting Trudeau until February. Let's get real. I don't know if he's going to try dragging this out further till whenever, October or July or some other time that's better for him in the polls, or if it's just about the pension. Time will tell. But this is all about just the Jagmeet show here. Next up, we're jumping over to CBC. They talk about the whole secret ballot situation with Justin Trudeau.
Today was supposed to be the deadline for Justin Trudeau to make a decision about his leadership, but it took him less than 24 hours last week to decide he's staying put, despite calls from some of his MPs to step aside. Here's what some Liberals said as they headed into question period today.
He took a choice, and we're going to have to go forward now with a caucus that's united.
I'm certain that the Prime Minister has taken in all considerations, and he's being the leader that he is.
I think the way to move forward for the sake of party unity is to hold a secret ballot vote.
Should there be a secret ballot vote in caucus to kind of put this to the test?
No. And what comes next? That's the big question that has to be answered.
If the Prime Minister chooses to stay on, which all indications are that he will, I'll support him.
I don't think he can be convinced.
Why not?
Ask him. He's convinced he's the right guy. I think he's getting bad advice.
If we don't step in and make a solid change here, we can allow somebody like Pierre Poilievre to govern for the next 1, 2, 3 terms. That would be disastrous for our country.
The Liberal Party is strong and united. Within hours of hearing from anxious Liberal MPs last week, Trudeau was adamant he isn't going anywhere, a point he repeated this weekend.
I am determined to lead this party into the next election. I am actually really excited about this fight.
Trudeau says he defied the polls in 2015 and won that election, and he can do it again.
To prejudge the outcome of an election already is something that I don't think people would be too wise in doing.
But Trudeau...
Oh, easy there, Stalin. What does he have up his sleeve? You're more than 20 points behind the polls.
Those poll numbers are much lower now than they were 9 years ago. CBC's poll tracker has the Liberals down some 19 percentage points compared to the Conservatives.
You've got government's approval rating at the lowest it's ever been, and the Prime Minister himself, his negatives have never been as high.
This pollster says it's Trudeau who's dragging down Liberal Party fortunes.
About 60% of Canadians have a negative view, and only 23% have a positive view.
Still, Trudeau's allies are asking wayward MPs to fall in line and focus on their main opponent.
At some point, to keep knifing like this, like put up or shut up.
I do think it's a wild distraction to be talking about this as opposed to the toxic narrative coming out of Pierre Poilievre's mouth. At the end of the day, we need to
How about the SDTC scandal? How about that toxic narrative?
Rally together and focus on the real threat.
Disgruntled MPs haven't decided on a plan for Trudeau if he stays past Monday's deadline. Some say they want to hear from the Prime Minister before taking their next step. At least one has floated voting non-confidence in the government. And Wayne Long, he wants a secret ballot in caucus.
So a possibility, JP, though, is this could all fade out.
It could, but even if it does, these MPs have still delivered a blow to Trudeau's brand. Pierre Poilievre has pounced, saying, how could Trudeau ask voters for a 4th term when so many of his own MPs want him gone?
You can't argue against that point. If his own party members don't like the guy, why would millions of Canadians? We've already cast him aside. He's not coming back. There's never going to be another Trudeau running this country ever again. I don't know why there's still 20% of boneheads in Canada still like that guy, but he's not coming back. There's no other Trudeaus coming back. It's time for him to go.
Okay, Louis Blouin is the right guy, though. He's the parliamentary bureau chief for Radio Canada, and he's here with me now. So, Louis, this was supposed to be the deadline day. The Prime Minister said what he said right away. His office tells me today nothing has changed. Is there any oxygen left in this push to take him out? You see some frustration and calls for secret ballots, but nothing grand, bold. It seems...
I do not feel that there will be a secret ballot, especially that there's no rules to have such a vote in caucus. There's no mechanism for it. So
Wayne Long wants a secret ballot, but he is right. There is no reason. Trudeau doesn't have to allow it. It would be a courtesy for him to allow it and abide by the rules. And there aren't even rules set for the secret ballot. Yet they want to do it, but...
I don't really see it. And also, I do not see any movement if at least a group of MP doesn't say, we are ready to quit caucus, or we are ready to vote against the government in a non-confidence vote eventually. If that doesn't happen, I don't see it. And even if it's a small group, Trudeau has maybe a margin of 10 votes if he loses some MPs or some votes in a non-confident vote. So he has some room still. Really, I think he will not go unless there is a minister who starts to speak up, if there's aspiring candidates to succession that would come out and try and push him out. But we don't see that at the moment. And what I'm hearing from people around possible successors is that they do not want a leadership race before the next election, because there's the risk that if they lose to Poilievre badly, if they don't prevent the majority, that then they're done, that it would damage their own brand as a possible eventual prime minister badly. So honestly, I think Mr. Trudeau is still in place to stay. It doesn't mean there's not going to be some waves in the next coming days, David, but I don't see it happening.
Yeah, it doesn't seem.
That's why carbon tax Carney doesn't want to jump into the ring right now. But Christy Clark, though, she's a snake. She doesn't have any problem jumping in right now. But Trudeau's not going to give up his post to her. That's for sure.
Seem to be building to anything that's critically has a critical mass to threaten the prime minister. Yep. Okay, another deadline. This one is tomorrow, because it's a busy week here in Ottawa. The Bloc Québécois wants its demands on a 10% across-the-board increase to the OAS for people between the ages of 65 and 74, and it wants the supply management private members bill that's in the Senate passed. Not going to get the Senate stuff by tomorrow. No. What are you hearing on this front? There's a report from the National Post today saying the Bloc is going to move into bring down the government mode tomorrow. What do you know?
Well, that's what Mr. Blanchette promised if he didn't get what he wanted. What I've been hearing in the last few days is that it's not going well, David, that the discussion has not led anywhere. So my expectation for tomorrow at 11, when the Bloc Québécois leader comes into this press conference, is that he's going to try to talk now to other parties to say that he wants to bring down government. We'll see tomorrow if we have the confirmation of that, but we have no signs from our source around the PM or in the Bloc Québécois ranks that they were close. There were some talks last week for sure, but there's nothing that indicates that they're close to.
Well, we had heard
Pierre Poilievre came out today and poked the Bloc a little bit and said, hey, are you guys going to start wanting to vote them out or not? He's trying to get them on board. The only way for this really to work is a bunch of those 24 Liberal MPs come over with the Bloc and Pierre Poilievre to vote Justin Trudeau out. I think too many of those Liberals, the 24 who want him out, they're spineless. I don't think they're going to do it. I still stand by what I said before. I think there'll be a couple that defect, whether that's voting against Trudeau or move over to as independents or maybe do something else. I think most of them are way too spineless to do anything about it. You'd think some of the people that are stepping down who are not seek re-election, they would actually move over as independents just in defiance. Maybe they have other career plans and that somehow taints that in the future. I don't know.
Finance was working on a counter proposal that might be more affordable, because what the Bloc wants is $3 billion a year and growing. More of a means tested, really aimed at low-income seniors, compromise on the OAS. But Mr. Blanchette was very clear he was not willing to compromise. So in the absence of something, what's the play then? Offer this to the Parliament and hope the NDP bites? Is that where this goes?
Yeah, maybe that's where it's going. Maybe the NDP is going to accept something more targeted for seniors, paired with something else, because it would be difficult for the NDP to accept something less that the Bloc Québécois already, asked for. But if they get something else out of it, we know that Mr. Singh spoke a lot about price fixing in grocery stores, stuff like that, clean water on Indigenous communities. It could be a way for them to try and get something if we look forward at the fall economic statement. So we'll see about that. But for the price tag of what Mr. Blanchette is asking, $3 billion a year to buy 6 weeks in Parliament to the government, like
$500 million a week is a lot of money.
It's a lot of money to stay in power for a few weeks. So if they can get spending maybe more control, more specific, but being able still to say that they did something for senior with the approval of the NDP, that could be a way forward for them.
Okay, speaking of big money, in the backdrop of all of this chaos and deadlines and demands, you've broken a story. The Liberals are moving ahead with an idea that on transit, there's a major project announcement.
What would you say doing Montreal to Toronto in less than 3 hours, 300 kilometers an hour, air in your hair? Well, not even.
Come on now.
Yeah, but that's we've been talking about that for years and years and years.
So it's the high speed.
Yeah, so they're talking about a high-speed train. We're not going to get into all this. There's basically going to be 6 stops along the way: Montreal, Toronto, Quebec, Peterborough. I'll believe it when I see it. The main takeaway here is the Liberals are probably still trying to work out some sort of deal. I'm sure they're quite confident they got Jagmeet support, so they don't really need the Bloc. It just puts them in a more vulnerable position. Talk to this guy here. He actually has some really interesting insights.
Force, because that is the way he does business. But it's interesting when you look at where we are after the events of last week. A demand to step down, rejected. A demand to boost OAS, possibly rejected. For a government that is in a pretty tough spot, they're taking some tough stands against people who want them to flinch and bend.
Yes, but that doesn't mean that the Prime Minister and the Liberals still don't have buckshot in their wings. They do. This is not a good situation or a good position to be in. That being said, we're in the same position we were in October 2021. This is a government that has 153 seats. That's a pretty robust minority. It can make deals one-offs. Despite the vigorous aggressive shredding of the CASA agreement, and the great strain that Mr. Singh told us that he was making when he tore it up, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they found much common ground to keep them going for the next few months.
It's a 4-page agreement. It's not a phone book, right? So I just want to point that out. He can rip that pretty quickly.
Listen, I got these muscular earlobes from looking at those kinds of things. Look, I think Chinny's right. A lot of Conservatives are expecting to be here for another year. And they may be right about that. This could go on for some time. I was also struck by the comments of the Prime Minister, who seems to be getting more aggressive as he faces this rebellion with people proffering plastic pitchforks. And he's reminding them, in effect, that they were nobodies in 2015 and that he made them somebodies. And if they're going to get a pension in a year or so from now, it's because he made them somebodies. So he seems to be getting feisty with his own people, suggesting he's not going anywhere.
That's really interesting. So I can see that that's totally Trudeau's personality, threatening the pensions and just saying, you know, I'm the guy who made you. If you want a pension, you have to buck up and support me. That's totally a Trudeau move. Now, the pensions that go over the election day there, that's another issue. Like Stephen Guilbeault, there's a bunch of them. I don't know if they're still trying to push the election day back so they can get all their cronies those extra pensions that it's going to cost us millions, but they have to get thrown out of power before then, well before then. I wonder, though, if Trudeau sits them down and says exactly that. It's like, you want your pension, you shut your mouth and you support me.
But, you know, Vandana, the idea that people didn't make up their mind in 2015 until the final couple of weeks of the campaign, he's the Harper in this narrative, right? Like, he's the incumbent 3-term prime minister. So I get that it's good to have some nostalgia, but does that analysis really track in like, he's not Harper in terms of style and stuff, but in terms of longevity?
I think what he's saying is campaigns matter. Sure. And things can change on a dime. And I think, and that he is, you know, a very good campaigner. Like, I've worked with a lot of other people. I've worked with other ministers, and his ability and his pace and his ability to go into crowds and get energy from it, it's like no one else.
She's a Liberal advisor, just a heads up. First off, David Cochrane saying the 2015 election was decided only in the last few weeks. Canadians have already decided. We've decided for over a year plus 2, 3, 4, 5 years, depending on how dialed in people are. But just the general public, I think in the past year and a half, they've really come in like, we need to get rid of Justin Trudeau. This is not going to come down to like the last 3 weeks and like, I wonder if it's Pierre Poilievre, or maybe Justin Trudeau. Is he a good guy? No, it gets decided. It doesn't matter how good of a campaigner he is. It doesn't matter how much hair gel he sticks in his hair and he walks around with a little strut. No, people are done with that. He's done. It's not going to happen.
I think he's banking on that. I think, but I do think he's talking more about like that team effort of Team Trudeau. I think, but
he's lost his team. His team doesn't even trust him. We all see it now. So it doesn't matter how much swagger he has or how much energy he can bring out of the crowd. It's not working. He's done. He's completely done. The Liberals are done. They just need to call election tomorrow. Be done with it. I can't find the clip, but Mark Miller was outside Parliament. He was asked about the secret ballot, and he says that's their deadline, not our deadline. It's really arrogant and pompous. That just gives you the tone of what him and Justin Trudeau are thinking. We jump over to CTV. They brought on this Liberal MP, Helena Jaczuk, to talk about the secret ballots.
I spoke to Wayne Long over the weekend, who said that there is a frustration, at least from his perspective, at like a feeling that the people in and around the Prime Minister, that isn't resonating. That those polls, that the prospect of what you're hearing at the door, the prospect of the next, like, it's not punching through. Do you share that sentiment?
It's hard to say. The Prime Minister obviously is surrounded by people who must be informing him of what the polls are saying. We all know he's a great campaigner, and he clearly thinks he can lead the party to victory.
A great campaigner. On what? He's going to bring in backyard swimming pools for everyone. Like, is he just going to make up complete nonsense like usual? We're past that. We already know his tricks. His trick is to lie and not deliver any of his promises, except for the green Luigi. That's the only thing he's delivered. Is for anyone who enjoys a puff of that, you got one of Trudeau's promises. Trudeau mentioned earlier in that radio interview that he hasn't started attacking Poilievre yet. He hasn't answered his attack ads. I mean, this is just going to be the same thing that we've had in British Columbia here, where David Eby only attacked John Rustad and the Conservatives. They didn't actually lay out anything they're going to do to make the province better. It was just announced today that the recount shows that David Eby now has 47 seats, the minimum number needed for a majority government. Funny how that worked out after the recount. Somehow the numbers just added up, so he's got a majority. It stinks like corruption. David Eby is a snake just like Justin Trudeau. They're just going to attack and not actually say what they're going to do for us with our money.
He also promised at the end of that caucus, and a number of MPs have shared this publicly on the record on my program, for example, Ken Hardy, that he would reflect on the considerations and the concerns that those members of caucus brought forward to him during that meeting. It was about 18 hours later that he said, I'm running again. A number of your colleagues were just clipped on our program saying that period of time was a bit of a disappointment to them. Some more strongly worded than others. Did you expect a longer period of reflection?
I think for all of us, when we're confronted with a difficult situation, it usually requires several days to reflect, especially if one has a little more time. Our Prime Minister is incredibly busy.
He's incredibly arrogant. Let's get real. He doesn't care about you guys. The decision was made before he even walked in that room. We all know that.
He is all over the place, meeting people and so on. So I think presumably the desire to put today as after the weekend, a little bit more time to reflect, was a very reasonable approach.
So what does it say to you that weekend didn't even occur, that essentially the day after he was saying what he did?
Well, scrums are kind of high adrenaline situations, and I think he felt that he needed at that point in time to confirm that he intended to stay. But I wouldn't say that that would preclude further reflection as he has had over the last 4 days.
And do you think that reflection is actually occurring?
I honestly have no idea.
Do you hope that it is?
I would hope that he is considering. Our duty is to report to the Prime Minister what is going on in our constituencies. And a number of people shared that information.
This space cadet here, she just said her duty is to report what's happening in constituencies to the Prime Minister. You know, your duty is to serve the constituents. Sure, report it to him is to serve your constituents. Her language here, it just tells a lot about the Liberals. It's all about just telling Trudeau what's going on, not how do we best serve the people.
And if this, if a secret ballot, for example, weren't to take place and this sentiment continues to persist, like, okay, this one meeting is over, there are more than 24 that came forward. Like, what is at stake in your view if that ends up happening?
To go back to clearing the air, I think a secret ballot where people express their innermost feelings on the subject with no fear of any repercussions or anything quite like that. When the result comes out, it becomes clear for sure he's staying or he's not.
Be an advocate for that result being shared, or would that just be within caucus?
Oh, totally within caucus.
I mean, it doesn't really matter. Aside from the exact numbers, if he steps down, then obviously the secret ballot was successful. There's more people voting than not. But Trudeau's not going to allow a secret ballot, as much as they want it to happen.
And just finally, have there been any conversations with anyone around the Prime Minister about the prospect of this happening?
I wouldn't know. It's simply something that is being talked about by a number of individuals. In fact, the first person who suggested it to me was a journalist as I approached before the Wednesday caucus meeting.
And the idea...
So this was their pushback, is if he didn't answer the secret ballot. The leaders of all the ridings, they're a bunch of spineless cowards. They need to actually stand up and vote against Trudeau. If they have a spine, a backbone to push for what's right, to properly represent Canadians, they won't do it, though.
Is it fair to say the idea has picked up steam among caucus?
I would say so, yes.
Okay, Ms. Jessica, I'll leave it there.
Well, there you have it. Secret ballots. I bet Wayne Long is going to get a talking to for just even suggesting the idea and trying to kind of being the backbone of the whole idea. You got Mark Miller saying that's their deadline, that's not our deadline. There's a lot of arrogance coming from both Justin Trudeau and his closest advisor there, like Mark Miller. When you have one bonehead advising another, it's not going to turn out well. Pierre Poilievre is going to have an absolute field day with this tomorrow in the House of Commons.